you guys stunts Anthony's growth or hinders his early development, not having Jonathan next to him?
Well, sure, look, when you don't have a great player, I mean, but I don't think it stunts his growth. No, not at all.
Doesn't help, but.
Hey, but it doesn't, I mean, I don't know. Did it stunt Andrew's growth without a special guy?
Reeta, I believe the answer to that is yes. Yes, it stunted his career because he is no longer in the NFL and retired early. Welcome, Reeta Hubbard, the NFL chick, to Brother from Another Ladies First Friday. How are you doing?
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me. I cannot wait to drag Chris Ballard in about 5 seconds here.
I'm so, and you know what? The Twitter, the X streets.
Twitter. Mama named it Twitter. I'm gonna call it Twitter. So anyway,
formerly known as Twitter, have been dragging him relentlessly, but I don't understand what he's saying, because he's like, did it affect Andrew Luck? And the answer is a resounding yes, it did. Like, you didn't think that answer through very well when you responded. So I was so confused. I mean, how many injuries did he go through? What reason does he think that Andrew Luck ended his career? I just really, truly am perplexed by his response.
So this is a little complex, right? Because in terms of a running back, did it, shorten Andrew Luck's growth in terms of his career? No. And here's why. Andrew Luck and Anthony Richardson are completely different quarterbacks. Andrew Luck was one of the most pro-ready quarterbacks I have ever seen come out of college personally and go to the NFL. Anthony Richardson, on the other hand, has a ceiling that's extremely high, but is not pro-ready as of yet. He relies a lot on his legs. He relies a lot on play action to do the things that he needs to do, which means that you need to have a good running back to do that. So to compare Anthony Richardson to Andrew Luck is malpractice within itself, simply because they're not even the same type of quarterback, and they didn't come out of college as the same type of quarterback. One was considered a generational guy off the bat. One is considered a guy that has a lot of potential, but is not yet where a franchise would need them to be, but they cannot let him get away because the potential is just too high. The problem that I have with his comment, though, is that, okay, so you can sit here and say a running back didn't hinder Andrew Luck's growth, but you know what did hinder Andrew Luck's growth? An offensive line, because he ain't have that. And that's the reason why he retired early, because he was tired of getting beat down to the ground like he was every Sunday. So it's nice of you to sit here and try to make apples and oranges fit in the same box, in which they can't. But there were other reasons why Andrew Luck's growth was hindering. It's because you didn't build a wall in front of him to allow him to be the quarterback that you wanted him to be. But again, Anthony Richardson is not Andrew Luck. He needs Jonathan Taylor. He's going to need him to execute the play action to allow him to pass downfield, because you know what? If you watch game tape at Florida, that's what you would have noticed that they were successful in doing. And so for him to say that is disingenuous. It's a lie, amongst other things. And this is why coach speak, GM speak is just, you got to take things with a grain of salt. Of course, he's going to try to say those things. But if you know these guys, these quarterbacks specifically, you know that the proof is in the pudding, and that Anthony Richardson is not Andrew Luck in that regard at all.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like he was just being a little defiant, he was being bombarded with a lot of questions. There was a lot on Jonathan Taylor, why the decision was made. And then it moved to how is this going to affect, Anthony Richardson. And I think he was just a little like, maybe not flustered, but I think it was just like a little like defiant. Like, we know what we're doing. We make our decisions. And so they're not great decisions. But to be determined. But yeah, I mean, there was so much fallout from this Jonathan Taylor. I mean, we've been talking about him all week. And, he's not going to be available for the first 4 games of the season, right? He remains on the right. And so how do you think that will just impact them early in the season and impact Anthony Richardson just for those initial 4 games, And then also just with him not playing, because then when he gets back, it's like, is he going to be ready to just go even when he does get back? So I'm wondering, it still feels like overall there's going to be ramifications for their season and for their newly named quarterback.
I mean, obviously, there are going to be some struggles in that regard because, as I, already said, Anthony Richardson relies a lot on play action to be successful. I'm not saying that he can't be successful, just straight up throwing passes, called passes. But a lot of his success comes from play action because he himself can run. And so you have defenders that are concerned about that as well. And so it's going to be an issue in terms of, well, Jonathan Taylor is one of their best players. You know what I mean? And it just so happens to be the guy that is one of their best players that is not going to be playing for the first 4 weeks is the guy that Anthony Richardson probably would have relied on the most based on the way that he plays football. So that's the issue there. Then you bring up the fact that, okay, well, he hasn't played. He came to training camp. I think that he went with the team for the first preseason game. And then after that, is when he was excused from the team and we didn't hear from him. And then the trade requests started coming in. So now there's a situation of him getting back physically, him getting back emotionally, him getting back mentally. All of those things are coming into play because this is a guy that feels like his value is the franchise doesn't see his value and that he believes that he needs to be paid as such. And so now you got to go to work for the people that don't value you, in your opinion. And so you feel like you wonder, how is that going to affect the way that he plays once he finally gets back on the field? And how long is it going to take for him to knock the rust off? Those are the biggest concerns here. I mean, the Colts ironically are in a bad division that Jacksonville should handedly win. And then so they're not necessarily playing for any type of playoff spot. They're not going to be that good. So I guess you're like, okay, these are the growing pains, but wouldn't you like to have your quarterback have a guy like Jonathan Taylor, a surefire insurance policy that can help you move the chains, be on the field and help him get, deal with the stress of being a rookie quarterback, being put in the position that he's in? I just don't understand what's going on with any of this. Just pay the man some money that he's worth, or at least somewhere close to what he's worth. Because I promise you, if you do that, everything goes away. It's all semantics at this point. Just pay the man the money. He deserves it.
Right. Well, you've been saying all along that the Colts never really wanted to trade him. It doesn't seem like they were dealing in good faith anyway. They did not come to the table with clean hands because they're saying that they don't, Irsay made all these comments. Running backs, blah, 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 blah. They, doesn't basically value them that highly. But then the asking price was quite high for Jonathan Taylor. So you either value him or you don't. I know this organization has a history with running backs anyway, and how they treat them and pay them. So, it's unfortunate for him. He is not going to get paid by the Colts, but who did get paid? TJ Hockenson got paid.
Mm-hmm.
And while he is not a running back, he got paid handsomely.
Yes, he did.
Historically. One of the biggest deals for a tight end in NFL history, which is great. I'm never going to hate on anybody getting their chicken, but it's a little interesting because when you look at, and look, it's not drastically higher than like a Darren Waller, but he right now is the highest paid. And when you look at some of the names on this list, Super Bowl champions, Travis Kelsey, you see some of the other names on here that he's being paid higher than all of them. It's interesting. I think that's sort of my initial takeaway. Again, you are worth what someone is willing to pay you. So I'm not knocking him for the contract that he gets, he sort of reset the market. So the Steelers may not like that he did that, but he reset the market. So, I mean, it's a good thing for other tight ends that have to get paid, but I just thought it was notable that he received this contract and he may not necessarily be the best one on that list.
Yeah, I mean, I like TJ Hockenson a lot. He was with the Detroit Lions and got traded to the Vikings midseason, which is crazy within itself, right? Because that's an in-division trade. And so I think now we understand why the Lions traded him, because they probably weren't going to pay him. He probably asked for the money that he got, and the Lions probably said, nah, we ain't going to do that. So we're going to go ahead and trade you somewhere to somebody who's willing to do that, which was probably the Vikings. I like Hockenson. I think that he is a value player on the teams that he's on. But when you look at that list of guys that he's gotten paid over, I'm sorry, it's ridiculous. And look, I understand how contracts work. I understand that the values of contracts increase every single year for specific skill players. So I understand that the contracts that we saw on the board already, Mark Andrews getting $14 million, Travis Kelce $14.3 million. I understand that those are previous contracts and they've been paid previous years. So the market is always going to increase. My point is, though, is that even with the market increasing, he's still not worth more than Mark Andrews and what he got 2 years ago, or Travis Kelce or George Kittle. He's not. And so when you look at the guys that he got paid over, maybe you can make an argument for Dallas Goedert. That potentially he could go there, but every other person that he got paid more than, he's not better than. And so just because the market increases doesn't necessarily mean that a guy should just get the best contract because you feel like he's a top 10 player. Well, he's not a top 3 tight end. So I don't understand why he's getting paid more than the 3 tight ends, in my opinion, which is going to be Kelce, Andrews, and Kittle. Why would you be giving him more money just because the market tells you that you have to give tight ends, increasing money every single year? Oh yeah, by the way, while we're decreasing the value of running backs. But it's just funny to me that as good as I think he is as a player, that now he is the highest tight end, and many people probably didn't even know who he was prior to getting paid the way that he did. But kudos to him and his agent, because that's a good fleecing. I ain't mad. At the end of the day, get your money, get paid, go ahead, get paid.
Shout out to him. But you know what I'm excited about? Joey B is back. My God, Joe Burrow's back, because I'm a big Joe Burrow.
I'm not excited.
I understand the AFC. I understand why you may not appreciate that, but I do. I really enjoy him. I like Joe Burrow, and so it was good. But it was good to see him back on the field. And look, the test will truly be like playing right in the game, because practice is never going to really truly reflect the conditions of being on the field playing on game day. But he looked good. Was throwing passes, and the way everyone was speaking, his teammates, coaches. I love this. He announced on his IG story, I'm back. But, I think that everyone seems positive, the coach didn't commit completely to saying that he would play game 1. But I think that's just I think that's smoke. I think he's going to be playing. What do you think, Reeta?
I mean, you got to make that the possibility, right? Because Joey Burrow is the best quarterback that team has, obviously, by a long shot. And even with the wide receivers and the weapons that they have around him, and any quarterback that would come in, he still gives that team the best chance to win. You do wonder how cautious they're going to be, because we've heard Jamar Chase talking and saying, well, I'm surprised that he came back. I thought that he should wait a couple weeks into the season to come back, because I think that what happened is that injury was probably a little bit more dangerous of a tear than what we've been perceived to be told. And so you're wondering, how healthy he is. But I also understand that, Joe Burrow is a competitor. He wants to get back out there on the field, and he wants to try to be out there for his teammates. And look, yes, he plays for the Bengals. Obviously, as a Ravens fan and a person that watches the Ravens on a regular basis, I'm not thrilled about it, but I think that he's a great quarterback. I think he's a great competitor, and he's great for the National Football League. You just want to make sure, if you're the Bengals, that you're not putting him into the fire too soon, because you don't want to re-aggravate an injury and make it worse than it already is. So it will be interesting, because the Ravens do play the Bengals week 2. So if I had to guess, if he's not ready by week 1, we're definitely going to see him out there week 2, because there's some bad blood going on between those two teams. I got to assume that he'll be back by then.
Can they risk, though, like starting their season without him for a few games? I mean, it's one of the toughest, it's a tough division, tough conference.
Exactly. And again, you play an intra-squad game at the very least at week 2. I obviously don't know what their first 4 games look like, but I know what their second game looks like. And that's their biggest rival in the Ravens, right? And all the talking that we've heard in the offseason, everybody's fired up after this game, particularly, the Ravens played the Bengals in their last game in the playoffs. And we remember how that ended. So I just don't know how you're able to say, oh, we're going to be able to play without Joe Burrow week 2. I definitely think that he's going to try his best to be out there, because you don't want to go down 0-1, in terms of your division. You don't want to have that opportunity of saying we're behind, so now we have to play catch up. And so it's funny, because last year the Bengals started 0-3 with Joe Burrow. They struggled. And they're going to deal with some struggles as well, because I believe Lyle Collins, their offensive tackle that they just got this offseason, is on the PUP list. So he's not going to play the first 4 weeks anyway. So there's going to be some issues there. But obviously you want Burrow out there, number one, at 100%, or at least close to 100%, because you don't want him to re-aggravate that injury. But also he gives you the best chance to compete within his own division, let alone the rest of his schedule.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm always for making sure we do what's best for the players' health. Unfortunately,
but sometimes the players, sometimes it's the players, right?
It's
how
the
much
players,
of this is Joe Burrow?
It's all of it. It's a money-making business. The NFL is a money-making business, and so look, we just hope that they look, they're going to always be a little bit more cautious because it's their quarterback, but you want to make sure you're not putting him in harm's way. And also, that we want to see Joe Burrow do Joe Burrow things on the field. So
except week 2,
okay, for you, my girl, I will. Okay. Because it's not like it's my team. And it's not like he's my QB. I just really like him. So I will put my
good dude, great player, even better person. You know what I mean? But hey, when enemy lines get there, you got to cross them. Okay. Week 2, I don't really want to see them do well, period, because they're in the division. Maybe if he plays somewhere else, I'd be more inclined to be like, I really want Joe Burrow to be great. But because he's in the Ravens division, I don't want them to be great. But I know he's going to do that anyway, because that's just the type of player that he is. So I know I'm going to be disappointed a lot of times this season already.
Heard you. All right. Well, look, there's one more quarterback in the AFC that we need to discuss, because, it's been all just a great time in New York, right? The Jets, Aaron Rodgers is a Jet now, and you're seeing pictures of him all summer. He's out at games and he's chilling with Sauce Gardner, and everyone's loving Aaron Rodgers. We're sort of seeing this other side of him. He's bonding with the young guys. He's on the sideline making jokes. And he's sort of likable, right? This Rodgers isn't so bad. I don't know if it was a PR campaign, but it was a little refreshing, right? And so we almost made it, Reeta. We almost made it to the start of the season. But Aaron Rodgers, he had to show himself. He had to
can't stay out his own way.
Show who he was. And so a clip emerged from Hard Knocks, right, of him talking a little trash, and it got X, formerly known as Twitter, talking about it. Let's take a look at that and see what transpired.
We're gonna just bootleg out to the left, flipping it left. McCole Hardman.
Bro, that. Show some respect, bro. Come on, what the is that? 5 damn steps? I don't even know who you are, bro. I don't know who you don't? I never heard of you. Let's go, let's go.
And the officials having to separate Jihad Ward and Aaron Rodgers. Drops back, lobs one, front left pylon. It is caught. Garrett Wilson. That's a Jet touchdown.
Poke the bear. I ain't doing that, bro. I'm not heard of you. Then I gave him the line that's uncomeback with a bowl. I said, I don't even know who you are. But he said, I don't know who you are. I said, well.
Come back with a bull. He couldn't even get that out in a straight
Get that out, right? Look, I mean, listen, it's true, right? Like, that is a line that you can't come back from. But and I know who Ward is. Ward is a former Raven, but I have to assume that more people know who Aaron Rodgers is over Ward. I'm gonna go ahead and make that prediction right now. But ultimately, look, it is definitely a different Aaron Rodgers than we're used to seeing in Green Bay. It's funny because Matt Stafford has been talked about trying to, get with his young players and relate to them, and he doesn't know how to relate to them. Well, Aaron Rodgers is older than Matt Stafford. I believe that they're at least 4 draft years apart, and he's doing it just fine. He's hanging out with Sauce Gardner, who's probably old enough to be his son at this point. So I don't know why you are having a problem, Matt Stafford, but it appears that it's okay to do or easy to do if you just talk to some guys sometimes, so it's kind of refreshing to see Aaron Rodgers be like this, because he's had some negative perceptions about him over the last couple of years. So this looks like a different Aaron Rodgers, but it also looks like a cocky Aaron Rodgers. And I'm going to assume it's because he has a lot more playmakers on this team than he's had on any of his previous Packers teams. And so you got, the wide receiving group that you have. You got the running backs that you have because you just got Dalvin Cook. You got the secondary that's good. You got the up front that's good because Quentin Williams is just got a new contract. So he's probably smelling himself a little bit to the point that in that same preseason game, that the Jets and the Giants play together at MetLife Stadium, and he's calling it Jet Life Stadium, okay? So he's smelling himself just a little bit. And to my understanding, they play an intra-squad game this year, the Jets and the Giants.
Yes,
I feel like it needs to be flexed into a game, because I think it's just a regular 1 p.m. game. This needs to be flexed. It needs to be either a quasi primetime game, like a 4:25, or it got to be a primetime game. This in the Denver Broncos, because all Aaron has done since he's got to New York is talk trash to everybody else. He said, don't talk about his coach to the Broncos, to Sean Payton. He threatened him. Now he's threatening Ward and telling Ward, you don't know who I am because I don't know who you are. I don't know you. Don't touch me. Have some respect. So something's got to give. We got to get some primetime games out of this at the very least, because Aaron is on something right now. He is riding real high right now.
He is. And look, he is Aaron Rodgers. He's not the same Aaron Rodgers, but he is Aaron Rodgers. And with you being Aaron Rodgers, you can talk a certain way. You can talk a certain way, right? But you're Aaron Rodgers. And while the Jets do have some nice young pieces, and minus a quarterback last year, there were some positives. This is still a team that has not done much in a very, very long time. And so now you're setting them up, because now you're talking, y'all are carrying yourselves with a certain kind of swagger, if you will. And you're, and then you guys are appearing on Hard Knocks, and we already know like the reputation of the teams that appear on Hard Knocks. So it's like, some people are saying this is Super Bowl or bust. And I don't really necessarily believe that this is a Super Bowl team, but like when you talk like this and you act like this and you carry on like this, y'all better have like a really successful season, because you chatting a lot.
You're doing a lot of chatting. You in a division that is very hard already with Buffalo, with Miami. And, we can't count out New England the way that we would like to. But, and you're in the AFC, which is a gauntlet within itself. So he's definitely feeling himself. But I can understand it, right? Like, I understand him having the weapons that he has, him having the defense that he has. He has his coach, Nathaniel Hackett, with him, which is a guy that he really respects and likes to work with. So I understand him feeling himself a little bit. This is some new life he got going on, NFL life. Sometimes I tell people I'm on my 4th or 5th regular life. This is his 2nd NFL life. So maybe he's feeling something in his new NFL life, right? But you better do something. You're not even just make the playoffs. You better at least get to the divisional round with all this talking that you got going on, because you're getting real snazzy with the schnoz, Aaron.
Well, look, he ain't the only one talking a lot, so we keep talking some football, but we're going to take it to college. We will be right back. Stick with us. Wow. It is finally time. It is finally time to see Deion Sanders debut as a new coach. And he's been talking a lot. So we have to see what the Colorado Buffaloes are going to do. But they play tomorrow, this weekend, and there's been a lot of hype around them, and largely it's because of Deion. So Reeta, Prime, you already know how Prime gets down. He is always talking. Always. And leading up into this matchup with TCU. It's just, he's getting into like back and forths with reporters and people in the media. And look, I get it. Cause like there's a lot of questions being asked about him. His team is being criticized before they step out on the field and do anything. But, there's just been a lot going on, So, there was an ESPN reporter who said, this may be the worst team. Essentially in college football, right? This may be the worst too. And I know you have some thoughts, which I'll let you speak on in terms of their schedule and how many games they may potentially win. But Tom, said you thought UMass was the worst roster in college football. It may be Colorado. And Deion took some offense to that. And so then Deion replied, and he's like, well, have you seen our team? What is this based on? And I get that. I mean, if someone said that about my squad too, I'd probably respond and get feisty too, Reeta.
Sure. Yeah. You gotta protect your guys, right?
You do. And look, Colorado didn't have a great season last year, right? But what's interesting for this season is, because, everyone is making use of the transfer portal, and he just brought in over 50 transfers. It's a turnover. It's a turnover like none other that we've ever seen before in college football. And so to me, Urban Meyer, I think, said he saw the team and was like, oh, they look pretty good. To me, I think it's like, if it was me, I would want to just kind of maybe sit back and wait and see what happens, right? But that's me. But others don't want to do that, and that's fine. That's their right too. And so I think I'm going to tell you, it's very rare that I'm sticking up for Deion Sanders, but I do think some of this criticism is because it's Deion Sanders, right? But maybe I'm wrong, because how can you really know how badly this roster is or how poorly they're constructed if it's so many transfers and we haven't seen them together? So I'm going to stop and leave it there, because Dawn Montgomery has joined us, and I'm excited for you to be a part of this conversation with us. I know Deion Sanders is your favorite person, but he's catching a lot of heat right now. So I want to hear from both of you. What do you think some of that's about? And is it fair?
You kind of embellished. You embellished there a little bit. He is not my favorite.
I thought people sensed the sarcasm. I thought they sensed the sarcasm.
I thought sarcastically.
Yes. But honestly, I'm with you. I hate that I have to side with him at this point because you have to give him an opportunity to kind of show and prove. I mean, the bar is technically low at this point for Colorado. I'm sorry. I have to be the person to say that. They're coming off of a 1-11 season. And technically when they were winning, it was like around 4 games and the head coach was fired at that time. So as far as I'm concerned, it's different and it's not something that college football is used to. But I think one thing that he has always stood out in doing is doing his own thing. And if his own thing means that it's going to create a winning season for them in Colorado, then as far as I'm concerned, I just feel like people should just sit back and watch and wait.
Understand the logic behind that. I definitely think that you do have to wait. I think what's going on is that everybody's looking at what's happening up until now and saying, okay, I don't think that this is going to be what we think. Him dismissing all of those players and all of these transfers. And then when you start looking at the schedule, because I know the Pac-12 is done. I know that they're about to be deceased in a year, but they still are constructed with a lot of good teams. So they're playing USC, UCLA with Chip Kelly. You still got Oregon, Oregon State, Washington State. It's very hard. Oh, by the way, they play TCU, who was just in a national championship last year.
Exactly.
It's very hard to look at the schedule and be like, where is he getting anything more than 4 wins? Now, what you can say is that 4 wins is better than 1. It's a 75% increase of what they won last year. And you'd be right? So like Dawn said, the level is low in terms of what your expectations are. But to me, that's more reason why Deion should say less and just put his head down, do the work. And when your players, if they overachieve, and if they start being what we did not see them to be, then you can come back and say, see, this is why y'all need to be quiet. But he can't help himself because there's always Prime and Neon Deion deep down inside of Deion Sanders. He just can't help himself. So he has to talk and say things. And now we're having conversations about things that he says as opposed to the program in which he's coaching. And that's the issue.
Yes. I mean, but look, this is what they signed up for, right? I mean, if you even looked at like the promo schedule, it had him on there. I mean, they're getting this attention, they're getting the spotlight shine, it's shining bright on them because of him. So this is what you sign up for. I think a valid question is, what does that mean when you sort of turn over a squad like that? Not that many players remaining from the previous, team. And just in general, when you bring a bunch of new people together, I think it's valid to sort of ask, how are you going to build a culture? Like, how are you going to bring these people together? But do you seem to take offense?
We can't use that word.
Yes.
Because God forbid. God forbid we say that.
It was very triggering for him. Why did it is?
So I think he's still carrying over that energy that he's had. The way he left Jackson State, let's just be honest, that's still on him. Like, even his daughter had something to say after Jackson State won against, South Carolina State. Shouts out to TC Taylor over there. But in my opinion, in this moment, what that says is he's actually rebuilding, right? In so many press conferences, we've heard from coaches whenever they're either taking on a job or they're actually, growing through like a hard loss or a tough season. They're always saying that they're rebuilding, but they have some of the same players. You never really see people coming over from the transfer portal. I just feel like he's somebody who's utilizing that and kind of taking advantage of it, and really it may have the opportunity to kind of prove that it works for him.
Right. Well, can we get those odds back up? Because Reeta, you said you don't see more than 4 wins. So I want to know, are you taking the over?
Barely.
And tell me the 4 wins that you see potentially.
I can't even, once I started looking at their in-conference schedule, I was just kind of like, I just don't know where the wins are coming, because again, I know that we're ragging on the Pac-12 because of their demise, but the Pac-12, very good. Okay, they play Nebraska. Maybe no. I only got 2 right now that just stand out big time for me,
and that's UCLA and California. Like,
So you were
but-
taking the under. Okay, Dawn.
I'm definitely taking under, but I'm technically giving him at least maybe 1 or 2 extra wins. You know what I'm saying? Because maybe it'll be like an any given Saturday type situation, like, you know, and that'll add to the season, the drama of the season. But I'm with Reeta here. Like, how? Like, just give him this season to do what he needs to do. And the fan base in Colorado, they have to kind of understand, you really should not be expecting this man to come over here and turn everything around in one season. Like, let's be real.
Okay. Well, so I don't know what the fair expectations are, but I think no matter what, if this
The fair
season's like
expectations are to have none. That's the fair expectation.
but there's gonna be expectations just because it's prime, it's Deion Sanders, the way that he's done everything so differently. So we know that there will be some fallout because of he did the transfers, he's so defiant, he's prime. Segment of the population that just wants to see him fail. So we'll see to be determined. But you know what, he left the HBCU, but you know what, I want to talk about HBCUs because there is a big matchup happening tomorrow, and that is Tennessee State University versus Notre Dame. So big deal in college football, big deal in HBCU football. Dawn, how do you feel about this game and this matchup?
I'm so excited about this. Now, number one, I'm not a Notre Dame fan, but the prestige of Notre Dame, if you're a college football fan, you understand the significance of just being in this stadium, being in this city, being just in this atmosphere. So that the fans are in for a treat just overall. Like, I'm jealous I can't be there. You know, let's start there. But overall, if you look at kind of the major significance here that I really see, besides just an HBCU and an FCS team stepping into that stadium, is more so like the only other time that most college football fans see an HBCU team is during the Bayou Classic, and it's generally the same 2 teams that play in it. So at this point, you're being introduced to a whole nother team, a whole nother band, a whole nother fan base. These people are going to show up, and I just want to make sure that it's just drilled that it's always important to kind of figure out other ways of giving HBCUs a bigger stage every single time. Because as far as I'm concerned, with the MEAC Swag Challenge, I don't feel like ESPN did. I mean, they did him a disservice, you know, during College Game Day. They didn't even mention it as far as like who they thought would win as far as college picks. But we know that Notre Dame, they're going to talk about Notre Dame. They're going to talk about them playing Tennessee State. So they're going to have to pick a team. But guess what? That gives them even more exposure. And I think that that's one of the things that we've consistently asked for, is give us that space, give us that opportunity, and let us show up and show out and do what we do best.
I agree, man. Like, this is a huge moment for them. I am a #1 Notre Dame hater. I know you talked about the prestige. I don't give a damn about none of that. I hate Notre Dame. I root for them to lose every single time. I don't like anything that they do over there. Rudy is a terrible movie. I don't rock with Notre Dame at all, okay? So I look forward to these types of events. My favorite part, though, Dawn, is going to be the halftime show, because I know Deion don't like the word culture, but I do, and it means a lot. And so people are going to learn on Saturday. They're gonna learn some things, and it is going to be very interesting how they respond to it. Because if you've ever been to Indiana, you know that it's going to be a world of a difference from what Tennessee State looks like. So they're going to be brought some attention to some things, and I don't see how they won't enjoy that unless you're just a hater. But then again, if you root for Notre Dame, you probably are. So it's that, there's that. But I love just them having the opportunity. Do we think that they're going to beat Notre Dame? No, because we know that Notre Dame recruits as one of the best in the country. They have one of the best programs in the country, but it does allow these, HBCUs to be put in a spotlight. Notre Dame is on NBC every week. it allows them to be put in a spotlight that they've never been put in before. Things that, and players that, are playing well, get an opportunity to play in some bright lights that they've never had before. So I am extremely excited about this. I would love to see more of this. We know that the NCAA loves adding quote unquote cupcake games against top programs. And look, I know people will say, well, don't bring in HBCUs for that. Don't try to beat up the little man. But my take on that is that they earn money for the program, which is always a big thing. And two, they get the opportunity for the exposure. Why would I not want my program to be a part of that?
Correct.
Right.
And then if I'm gonna be 100 and be a true fan right now, let's talk about how we got 2 black head coaches on the field in that stadium, which has never happened ever before.
Okay.
Like, this is history in the making. And both of them fine. You know what I'm saying? You got Marcus Fine Freeman on one sideline, and you got Eddie Fine George on the other side. So we're winning. We are all winning,
Listen, I am joining Rita's bandwagon. I really don't hate Notre Dame, but for this game, I'm gonna hate them because, as y'all can see in my feed, I don't know how, but I need TSU, to pull off the upset for the culture. Okay, so we got the ban, and then I need the win for the culture. Okay, what did Issa Rae say? Look, I get that there's other, of us involved over on Notre Dame, but for purposes of this weekend, I'm rooting for Issa Rae said, if you know, you know.
Everybody black.
Marcus makes it. Freeman makes it less. Freeman makes it harder for me to hate them so much, but that's the thing. Look, once he's gone, then I'm back to hating 110%, baby.
Oh,
so now
absolutely.
It's 99.9.
Listen, Dawn, we cannot let you come here and let you go without touching our beloved WNBA. So, I just wanted to get your thoughts and pick your brain quickly because I saw this interesting poll that came out that ESPN recently did. And look, I think it was only about 34 players. It wasn't that many players, but they basically had them rank what they see as the top issues, in the WNBA. And of course, travel was amongst them. And that makes sense. We all know that they need to get the travel under control for a variety of reasons, and I would tie in security with travel because of what happened with Brittany Griner in the airport, right? And so to me, those sort of go hands in hand. It's a player safety thing from purposes of them being on the court. It's a player safety issue, just like, recovering their bodies, but it's also a security and safety issue because when they're traveling, you have crazy people walking up to players. So I get why that is the top concern for them. But what was interesting to me is roster spots are at the bottom. And I think often when we think about expansion, we're just thinking about, what other new teams are you going to add in other places? But expansion is also possible just by expanding the number of roster spots on the team. And both have been discussed, and proponents of the WNBA come down in different places on this. Some people think, we shouldn't be doing any kind of expansion. Some think the expansion should be with roster spots, and some think we should add new teams. But people are somewhat divided on this, but it does seem like the players who are currently playing, they seem to rank expansion low. Kelsey Plum earlier in the season spoke about it too, and she was not... she was like, I think there's just other things that we need to focus on. And so I found the comments interesting. I found the poll interesting, especially in light of the fact that the commissioner just visited Denver and there have been talks of expansion, right? And this has been the talk, expansion. And you also recently, had Destiny Henderson. If you know Destiny Henderson, I love Henny. She's a fave, but she's been bouncing around on hardship contracts this year, because she can't get a spot on a team because there's not enough roster spots. And we remember earlier in the season with Alexis Morris criticizing some of the vets who won't leave, right? She did apologize, but saying you need to go and give up those spots. And we don't need these wars between players. So I would say some of these players trying to get in would agree with expansion. But where do you see this, Dawn? Like, where do you land on this?
So where I land on this is along the lines of where Kelsey's at. Like, literally, can you focus on the current issues that this league has? Because those particular issues consistently have been a thing. Like, and we're not talking just recently because the fan base has grown, but just overall, like consistently throughout the 25 years of this league, these things have been issues. And so if you can get that down, then I'm cool. I'm all cool, especially if you can really tackle travel. I'm all for expansion. But one thing about expansion that most people have to understand, yes, there's talks. Yes, they're going to be doing these things, but that's also to not only grow the fan base, but to see where the fan base would be successful if the team comes to that particular city. I mean, look at the NFL. The NFL has been out overseas now, you know, a couple of times in a couple of countries. And so they're growing the fan base that way. I see this as an opportunity for the WNBA to try to figure out some other ways of making money. But if you don't get these travel issues taken care of, if you don't handle, you know, how many roster spots most people can get, which could actually be beneficial towards the team expansion, I just feel like these players are just going to be frustrated because if there's long layovers, if there's issues getting to a game, if games are being canceled and things like that, like there's other things we could be talking about. But this one thing. And then two, if we're going to be 100, I've always been an advocate about trying to figure out how to increase the salaries for these players. Where's the money? Like, okay, you want to expand, but that's going to cost money to do. So if that's going to cost money to do, can you put it in the very things that these players are telling you that they need? And that's the frustration that I really have with this commissioner. She consistently keeps missing the mark. She consistently keeps ignoring some of the things that the fans are saying. Or if she hears it, it's like, well, we are doing this. Girl, we don't know, because the league office isn't really keeping us updated on every single thing that they're deciding to do or work on, and they're not really being fully transparent. So in this moment, when I see you have this grand old party in Denver, Colorado, you know what I'm saying, having a grand old time, how much did it cost you to do that? Because was there any travel issues with any previous teams to where maybe some money could have went towards that? As far as like security and all of those things, like you see how I'm thinking as like, okay, we're gonna keep this business minded, and I'm removing my fan freedom and all of the things. Then I'm like, okay, from a business standpoint, none of this makes sense. None of it.
I'm guessing Kathy's counter is gonna be like, if we expand, it brings in more revenue and money. I'm sorry, Reeta, go ahead.
No, but and so yeah, that makes sense. But ultimately, this is like a chicken and an egg type of situation. Like Dawn said, that sounds like that's more money that you're outputting when there's issues that you need to resolve before then. And I love the suggestion that Dawn made, talking about the NFL going overseas. And maybe there's ways in order to do that. Maybe go to cities like Denver that don't have teams and do like games there and start to see how you get the feel of it there. But like just automatically saying, oh, let's put an expansion here when you're having players say, look, we have problems with travel and contracts and all this other stuff. Fix those things first, then you can talk about expansion.
Yeah, you know, I think it's a challenging issue. But I do think the league is going to move towards expansion anyway. So we'll have to watch and see. Dawn, thank you so much for joining us as always. We love having you. We will have you back again soon.
Love y'all.
See you, Donnie.
Oh my gosh, look at that. It's such an amazing picture. Wednesday night, we were just having a ball on Twitter. Women, we were we were having a good time, Reeta, because Nebraska Volleyball, they set an incredible world record, over 90,000 plus seats filled, tickets sold, and it happened in a very short period of time. 92,003. World record, most attendance ever at a women's sporting event. I mean, it's incredible. It was an incredible spectacle, and I don't mean that in a negative way, to watch and see. And it was great. We were popping our collars, you know, on Wednesday night, because, you know, sports in general is a space where people try to tell us we don't belong, whether it's playing, whether it's covering, you know, and for a women's sporting event to have this kind of turnout and impact. It's incredible. What did they say? If you build it, there you go. And this is just a continuing trend. We've seen it with the WNBA. We have seen it. Attendance is increasing. TV ratings are increasing. We saw it with the college tourney for women's basketball, right?
Yep.
Like, people do absolutely care and are passionate about women's sports.
Absolutely. I mean, Angel Reese is everywhere, right? And so to see that women's sports is just trending up is a great thing to see. And like I told someone not too long ago, if people started separating and viewing women's sports as what they are and don't compare it to men's sports, you will enjoy it so much better. No one is trying to be men. They're trying to be women, but they're doing things that they love. And that's the difference. That's the problem, is that you're not allowing yourself to see it as women's sports. You're trying to make it to be comparing themselves to men's sports. And that's not what's going on. They're doing the same thing, the things that they love to do. And when you start to look at it that way, I feel like you can make it more enjoyable because you don't feel like that there's something that you need to compare. And so I want to shout out my homegirl, Chanel Bird. She does a thing and she talks about women winning every single week. And she shouts out these women, and she definitely shouts out sports women as well. I think it's really important for us to acknowledge how much the women's sports are growing and will continue to grow over the years. It's beautiful to see.
Exactly. And we are unapologetic about it, okay?
Absolutely. Period. With a T. Period.
Hey, thank you for watching Brother from Another. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, go ahead and do that now. Don't forget, you can catch us 3 to 4 weekdays on PeacockTV.com and on Sirius XM Channel 85.